Good evening, everybody. I'm Isla Berman, the Director of Architecture, and tonight's event on the Refract House has basically two main purposes. The first, and perhaps the most important one, is to celebrate at CCA all the tremendous achievements of our team of students and faculty who led and participated in the Solar Decathlon this year. Yes, you can applaud. You'll have the chance this evening to applaud multiple times, and you're required to do so. In this competition, which was a joint endeavor between CCA and Santa Clara University, after 2 years of extremely hard and diligent work, our team won first place in architecture, first place in communications, second place in engineering, and this is thanks to our partners at Santa Clara, and third place overall out of 20 international teams, and this is an absolutely amazing achievement, and I want to congratulate everyone, Team California. As I said, this is an extraordinary feat, and as the Director of Architecture, I am so proud of all of our students and faculty for their remarkable accomplishments and very well-deserved triumphs. The Solar Decathlon, as with all real architectural projects, was truly collaborative, it was interdisciplinary, and it involved many people with very different types of expertise. And at this time, before our presentation this evening, I want to acknowledge those who were critical to its development, as well as those who represented CCA to the world in Washington as the upcoming new generation of leaders that will transform design into a new energy-efficient future. In addition, I want to thank Santa Clara University Engineering, all of those who supported and sponsored this project, as well as our staff, our administration, the Board of Trustees at CCA. This event this evening is really an opportunity for all of us to express our gratitude to all of you, without whom this project would never have been the success that it was. And I'm not able to acknowledge all of you tonight individually, otherwise we might be here all night, but if I can get the lights turned up, and please rise when I call your name, because I do want to at least point out a number of people. From our faculty, we had 9 courses that were part of this project. Faculty project managers Kate Simonen, who is no longer with us, and Peter Anderson. Andrew Cudless ran 2 design studios. I'm gonna ask you to hold your applause till the end, because this will be a really long night otherwise. Oblio Jenkins, Matt Hutchinson, and Peter Anderson led 2 CBD studios as well as a summer studio. Bruce Levin, who is now in Japan, led an interior studio, and Steve Lyons and Cynthia Wen from graphic design had a graphic design class, and also supervised the interns that were part of the communications and web package. Our students, because this was to be a student-led project or a student-run competition, at the very beginning we set up a student team of leaders, and of course they received an education about what it means to run an architectural project like none other. And I just want to acknowledge the 5 principal student leaders in this endeavor: Kyle Belcher, who will be presenting this evening, Anessa Matson, Mies Perkins, everybody's like in the dark somewhere, Andrew Peters, who was a student manager in dealing with construction, and Noah Greer, who was communications and was contributing to dealing with all the coordination of all the other elements. We also had 18 students in Washington, in addition to more than 75 architecture students who participated in all of the above classes and who were also summer interns that contributed to this work. In graphic design, Mike Hugh, Brad Wharton, Siming Wong, Lucinda Wasik, Heidi Reifenstein, Leah Hickey, and Tim Grunenson were all a part of the project. We had a videographer, Alex Winter, and we had students from ceramics, glass, painting, industrial design, textiles, fashion, illustration, furniture, and interiors as well that were part of the project. Our supporters and sponsors were a critical part of this, and I just want to acknowledge Noel Perry from our Board of Trustees, PG&E, Brandon Hernandez and Jonathan Manzo, ID8, Greg Andreas from Ryan Associates, Stan Wu, who helped us on the structural engineering, Steve Oliver, Synopsys, Simon Blattner, and Mary Zlott. And I want to give a special thanks to Brenda Tucker. Brenda, you have to stand up. Our Director of Public Relations, for being one of the main reasons that we received probably over $1 million worth of publicity on this single project. Please join me in a round of applause in thanking all of these faculty, students, staff, and sponsors for the tremendous work. For those of you who are less familiar with the project, and I'm sure those of you who have been involved know all of this, but for the few of you, the Solar Decathlon is an international competition that's sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy, their Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, in which 20 teams of college and university students compete to build a solar-powered, energy-efficient house. Over a 2-year period, and we started this project 2 years ago, faculty-led student teams engage in multiple levels of collaborative research, design development, project management, production, and construction. And the final objective, of course, is to design a house for the 21st century that's powered entirely by solar energy. The competition happens every 2 years, and of course we were asked whether we wanted to go again for the next round. We'll continue that discussion on our panel. When Santa Clara invited us 2 years ago to join together as a team in the 2009 decathlon and submit a joint proposal to the Department of Energy. They had been contestants in the earlier decathlon and, having placed third, were invited back. I received a phone call from Lisa Findley. This was before a month and a half before I actually came to CCA, asking if I would be interested in having the architecture department do this. I did a little research on the decathlon. I said yes, quite honestly, not knowing what I was getting into with this. We started the project in January 2008 with Kate Simonin leading as our faculty project manager and Andrew Cudlis leading the first advanced design studio. And during that studio, what started as 12 distinct projects was eventually synthesized into 4. We then brought in an outside jury to assess the 4, who chose one scheme to pursue, but also instructed the group, recommended that they incorporate the most critical elements from all of the other 3 design projects. And then over the next 3 weeks, a group of students and faculty worked to transform these 4 projects into one, and this was the initial design of the decathlon. Since that time, we ran 6 more studios that included 2 summer studios led by the faculty I mentioned before, as well as 2 building technology classes and project management classes, an interiors linkage studio, a graphic design class, as well as a number of interns that were supervised by our internship coordinators as well. The teams were required to learn how to communicate their ideas while also raising funds or in-kind donations to support the project. And the project in the end concludes with what seems to be the beginning of the actual decathlon itself. And this is when the 20 teams transport and assemble their solar house in 4 days, which was one of the most amazing feats and one of the things that Kyle and Peter will be showing you this evening, to the competition site on the Washington Mall. And during the 11 days of this open public event, which attracted over 300,000 people, and in addition for our students to the multiple ceremonies that they were part of, and giving tours to visitors of their houses at a rate of 1,200 people per hour, the students and houses then participated, on top of this, in 10 Olympic-like contests that comprised the actual decathlon in architecture, engineering, and communications. In the face of our climate crisis and the rapid depletion of our natural resources, where more than 90% of U.S. energy is still generated from non-renewable sources, it's an imperative that we work collaboratively toward multi-scaled, interdisciplinary, sustainable design solutions. Given the high level of embodied energy within buildings and the extensiveness of their impact on resource consumption and carbon production, the ability of students to generate new strategies supporting the sustainability of the planet will be one of the most important endeavors facing the next generation of architects and designers. Design is the means by which alternative energy sources are combined with new technologies and with recycled and renewable materials to create a new vision for a future that can integrate high technology with environmental sustainability through adaptation, ingenuity, and innovation. Our decathletes, which will be our future architects, engineers, designers, and researchers, are the ones that need to carry this forward and to set a new standard in the field. Tonight, we have a presentation by Kyle Belcher, one of the student project managers for the decathlon and key team leaders, and now a successful graduate of CCA, even though we haven't let him manage to leave CCA because of the decathlon, and Peter Anderson, an associate professor of architecture at CCA and the faculty project manager on the project. Kyle Belcher, just a quick bio, he graduated last spring. He received the AIA Henry Adams Medal for the BARC program, and this is awarded for general excellence in architecture and given to the top-ranked graduating student in the professional program. Kyle was also one of the students who won first place in the ACSA 2008-09 Green Community International Student Design Competition for the Urban Reef Project that was part of the Pier 70 studio led by Mona El-Kasif and David Fletcher. And before Kyle and Peter's presentation, I've asked President Steve Beal to say a few words, and then after the presentation, I'll be moderating a brief panel to discuss eco issues and the future of design. Please join me in welcoming Steve Beal.
Well, thank you, Isla. It's really a pleasure for me to just say a few very brief words, and I want to especially acknowledge Brenda once again, who not only got us $1 million worth of publicity in Washington, but she pointed out all the best restaurants, she kept the cell phones going, she was our point of contact during the entire venture. I can't tell you how fantastic this experience was, and how proud I am to be president of CCA during the time when we participated in the Solar Decathlon. The Solar Decathlon event and the work of our students and faculty and the support of our board and friends represents what's really best about CCA. They taught me so much, they taught us so much as an institution, and we're going to do everything we can to continue that model moving forward. The values of collaboration, the sort of commitment to the important challenges that face this country, the role that designers, architects, artists can have in participating and contributing to real solutions is just a great, great message for young people, and it represents what's best about our institution today. Some of the memories that I bring back, I was able to visit DC with 4 of our board members, and to a person, we were blown away by the experience, seeing the mall packed with people, the interest level, the excitement in coming into these houses. But particularly, I'll never forget the memories of watching Stephen Chu, the Secretary of Energy from Berkeley, and the first Nobel Prize winner to be a Secretary of Energy, give the opening remarks at the ceremony, and he took the time to shake hands with every student from every team that was on the mall that day. It really was a change in the federal government, and we were able to see the commitment that they're bringing to this. So we are thrilled to be part of this. Thank you. You are going to be entertained and impressed by the work that you see, and then I hope that you can join the students and the faculty involved to help celebrate their success. We took on the big boys, and we really did a great job. So, way to go, CCA. Thank you.
Thank you all. Kyle and I are going to try to entertain you a little bit here. First, I would like to add one more set of thanks to the people on the other side of that wall there, who sometimes don't always get thanked. But the whole administration of the architecture program was very helpful in all of this. So beginning with Lisa Findlay, and then switching over to Isla Berman, and of course Judy Kresnick and Thomas Landry. Sorry. And David Meckel, of course. And we appreciate very much all of the work that you did in supporting the project, both behind the scenes and out in the open. So,
and I also just want to thank Isla personally. You know, this project had a lot of challenges to overcome, both financially, politically, working with two universities, setting up the class structure. And I can't see you in the shadows there, but thank you very much. This wouldn't, everyone else in this room has been thanked, and I just wanted to thank you personally. So this presentation, we're going to start with the house, and then go back to the process, and then look at some of the other teams that competed. Our house was made up of 3 modules, and if you looked at some of the other competitors, which we'll see later, they're pretty much boxes, with 1 or 2 exceptions in this year's competition. They're rectangles, and there's something to be said for the rectangle and efficiency and modularity in terms of transportation. But we tried to take those 3 shipping modules and bend them around the central courtyard you see here, and really promote the central courtyard space, and think of that as the 4th room. So if each of the modules has a primary living function, the courtyard was the 4th room, and each of those modules then open out onto that courtyard. And then the courtyard kind of extends the landscape and makes the site on the mall, which was kind of a tabula rasa in many ways. So like I said, 3 modules. The first module, Module A, was the living room, which you see here. Again, opening out on the right to the courtyard. Module B, which was the kitchen and bathroom, as well as the mechanical room, and was the wet module. And then Module C, which was the bedroom. Like Isla mentioned, this was a process that was 2 years in the making, and if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so as Isla mentioned, there were a number of different studios and classes that both directly worked on the project and indirectly. You just have a few images here. There were many different ways that the project was worked on, in small scale seminars as well as studio courses. We actually took over a part of the nave and were allowed to paint it briefly. Not a very nice color, but it was identifiable. And so we kind of created a real identity through the teaching of the courses. That was a little bit different. Our partners in the project, Santa Clara, used it as an extracurricular activity for their students, and there certainly was a lot of extracurricular involvement from our students, but it was primarily organized through the teaching functions here at our school, which was an interesting part of the merging of things together. So just to start the idea of how directly it went from very early conceptual models from the very first studio that was taught by Andrew Cudlis and the student projects that came out of that. Then it went through a number of permutations, but the interesting thing to me is how closely the original concept stayed, which I think is a real testament to the strength of the original concept of the house, the bending of the house around the courtyard. So when you go from the original conceptual model to the final built structure, there are many, many changes, and Kyle will take you through a few of those. But I think it's very interesting to start off from the idea that through all those changes and all of the different hands of the many, the hundreds of people who worked on the project in a collaborative, creative way, that we ended up with a project that flowed very directly from the original idea.
And like Peter said, the evolution of this project over its 2-year life here at school. Looking back, May 2008, so this was Aaron Ports was the source of the original concept, but many hands have augmented that initial concept. But This is what Aaron and his team had come up with at the end of the May studio. And then in August, we started looking at some of those proportions and starting to sit down with the engineers and talk about envelope. We changed the entry, the reflecting pool, changed sides. We went to a one cantilever scheme at this point. The width changed, the end cap angles changed a little bit. Landscape changed dramatically, and then to where we are today, with the landscape changing dramatically yet again. The modules are now a little bit wider. Because it's a kind of zero end game, we're limited to 800 square feet, and the 800 square feet is not conditioned space like we traditionally think of for square footage. It's actually, they call it the solar envelope. So it's what casts a shadow or what can affect the energy performance of the building. So any overhang or canopy counts against your square footage. So we maxed out that square footage. We're right at about 790 square feet, including the thickness of the skin. So when we changed the module size, it affected the angles of those end caps and every other kind of relationship, and so it slowly kind of became real. This is the final floor plan and landscape plan. One of the ideas that was one of our strong suits that we brought on early in the design process was moving the entry to the north side. When you look at some of the other houses and how those 1,200 people move through the house per hour, a lot of the front doors are off of the main avenue, which basically conceals the house from the public. And by wrapping that line along the back, it preserved that view for the general public as they're walking down, and had that kind of eureka moment when you walk through the front door and you actually get on that deck and you can look out towards the other houses. There's a number of thoughts and considerations that went into each of these moments, but that was one that I was really happy we preserved. Going through the construction, the diagram of how the house is assembled, it's a series of both modular strategies and strategies of getting the house as finished as possible in Santa Clara. Because we only had 4 days for construction, we had to balance what can we make in a kit of parts, what can we reassemble quickly, and what has to be done in Santa Clara. So you can see the modules connected here, and then a lot of these are the parts that get assembled afterwards in DC, such as the shades, the skin, which we'll move on to a construction photo and show the house naked, if you will, as well as the clerestory windows on the north side, and then the sliders here on the south that open out onto the deck. Unlike traditional CBD studios that we have here at CCA, we couldn't fake a construction set. Tolerances matter, thicknesses matter, and so this is just one of the wall sections pulled from our construction set, showing the kitchen wall and the back painted glass and the really simple interior palette that we have, as well as the exterior rain screen. The rain screen, in many ways, was part of the icon of the house. Was that color and texture of the screen, made from California redwood, which actually has a fairly interesting story. It's sourced from a factory that was badly damaged in a fire about 50 years ago, and so we took that wood that had been damaged and replaned all of those pieces down and cut and milled it ourselves, and assembled the screen that you see here, and really kind of capturing that California California vernacular of that redwood to skin the outside of the house.
I was going to say a few words about this. One of the things that I was most pleased with how well the team did was being able to balance many different competing and complex requirements. So they're both the requirements of the competition, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but some very kind of specific requirements of the competition, the requirements of being able to ship the building in parts from here in California to Washington, D.C. and reassemble in a short amount of time. But I think the greatest challenge was making this small house be a really wonderful place to live. And that required the input of many different people and many different inputs. So the slides you see here are kind of related to one particular concept that was developed very strongly, the kind of thickening of the back wall. So it's a small, simple building, but the students put together this concept of the thick back wall with much of the furniture built in and developed out of that. So this is very much an integration of the architectural and interior design and furniture design components of the house. And I think you can get an idea here in the three different modules. The living room module, furniture here, all of the kitchen module area there, and the bedroom module. So by wrapping it around in that very kind of clear diagram of the house, it ended up feeling much bigger. And I think that was a key element in achieving the #1 in the architectural category. The other kind of primary aspect that I think is particularly kind of unique from an architectural point of view, the integration of the landscape, the interior and exterior spaces, went far beyond just the idea of the enclosed courtyard. That enclosed courtyard was kind of an excellent starting point to the idea, but as the different semesters, the different studios engaged with that, I think the landscape decking and the layout and the overall plant selection, that changed perhaps more times than anything else in the house. And it actually benefited with each one of those changes. It was very much studied, and I think the final development of the exterior part of the house was also a really key element in the strength of the resolution. Kyle referred to it as the fourth room, the outside. It really was used that way during the whole exhibition and competition. In fact, you see the exterior, over here we've got the outside furniture, which was extremely comfortable and became used by everybody from Stephen Chu, the cabinet secretary, to pretty much every visiting VIP would locate there and take it over, including our president and our board members who came and visited, and I spent a lot of time there. Everybody wanted to just sit there and enjoy that space, which was really a wonderful part of the outside.
And one small note about that outside space. During the testing that took place over the 2 weeks of the competition, we were limited to only having 6 team members in the house. So that outside room became the staging area for person 7, 8, 9 when they switch shifts inside the house. And I'll talk about the competition strategy later, but it really became the hangout room because we weren't allowed to go in our house.
So this is the back side of the house, which I wanted to point out. I often, as an architect, like the back side of houses much better than the front side. The front side gets all of the attention in the design, but it's often the back side that ends up having the nicest proportions, in my experience. But in this building, you see the way the ramp curls around the north side, as Kyle mentioned, and enters from the north side. But there was a lot of, this was partly the secondary design of the deck and the terrace and the landscaping. Very thoughtful connection of all of the outside parts of the building, including the integration of the mechanical components and plantings and what you see along I guess this doesn't work, but along the ramp here, this is a very nicely done set of graphics that explains the house. So during the long waits, and our house had the longest waits, I think, of any of the houses, people had a very nice introduction to the house through the graphics and through the whole integration of this entry point to the house.
And those graphics became one of the moments of collaboration between us on the architecture side and the graphic designers. And so there was a lot of going back and forth as to what those proportions are. We also had to deal with the slope of the site. Because we didn't have a true survey that you would on a normal construction project, we had to, and Oblio's laughing here in front because he had to design the flexibility of the system to handle multiple slopes. And so there was constantly a feedback to the graphic designers and the fabricators as to what are the proportions of those panels, how do we integrate them on the site and be able to fabricate it quickly. I wanted to show this slide to show the screen, the exterior screen, and talk about some of the passive systems of the house. So in addition to the active systems of the solar panels on the roof and some of the other technology, which I'll talk about in a second, we wanted to embrace as many passive strategies as possible. Cuts down on our energy use, which is part of the competition, obviously. So by having multiple sliders as well as the exterior shades, there's multiple combinations and permutations that you can achieve depending on relative humidity and temperature outside. So you can open those sliders but close the shades, etc., in different combinations. The other thing I wanted to point out that you can see on the section there, the cavity that the screen comes down from, as well as the handrail, were two kind of late design changes. We had a really nice custom guardrail built for these end caps because we weren't sure again what the slope on the site was. But it turns out that our finished floor was below 30 inches, and so at the last minute, these custom fabricated guardrails got pulled off the house. Also, that cavity. During most of the design process over the last year, we had imagined that cavity as having solar shades or solar louvers that would have thin film PV and be an operable screen. And at the last minute, due to budget restraints as well as limitations from DOE, it got swapped out to this fabric that you see here. And then also another design change that happened subsequently is we changed what we called the PV skirt, which is this area here. So there was a constant debate about what to do with that space. And the reason we needed that space was shipping restrictions. So we're limited as to the height of the module that would fit on a truck. And we're going to show some of those truck photos in a minute. But the strategy was that the module arrives and then a racking system props up the solar panels, and you have that cavity that we wanted to conceal and provide an integrated look as opposed to some of the other houses. In fact, the bottom you can see Puerto Rico's house in the distance and see their racking system and have it read as two separate systems. And so we wanted an integrated look, and when we found the fabric, it made sense to continue that fabric up to conceal the racking system and have that read actually as one surface behind the rain screen. And then there was multiple moments in the house where there wasn't necessarily a correlation between what we wanted to do and points in the competition, but we still thought it was either an important message or important design opportunity. And one of those, as Peter started to mention, was the landscape strategy, but also water. And we use the decathlon as a way of kind of highlighting some of the drought issues that we face in California relative to water. And I wanted to give special shout out to Anessa and Annabelle for working on the sourcing all of the plants and landscaping. They're all California non-invasive species. And on the bottom right here, we listed out each variety in our construction drawing set. Here on the top left, you see this is where the deck terraces down, and so these are all edible plants again, promoting California lifestyle, that you can grow the food that you're going to cook in your kitchen. And then here on the right is the reflection pool that we have that's sitting under the cantilever on the living room. And a lot of people ask us, well, why have a reflection pool? Is it just for aesthetics? And what we tried to do was have a completely integrated system with water and the house. So it's a rainwater catchment system. All the rainwater that falls on the roof collects to that pond. That water then gets filtered, and we can use it to then irrigate the edible garden that you see on the top left. What's not shown entirely here, but on the back side, on the north side, which Peter talked about that elevation, there's what we call G plants, which actually filter the gray water that the house produces. And the idea is that there's different strata of sand and rock that filters the dishwater, the water from the shower, the water from the washing machine. It filters that water, and then we can use that to irrigate the non-edible plants. And this highlighted one of the challenges in the competition was building code and local code, that we had to meet Department of Energy's code at sometimes it was Department of Energy's code that had precedence, sometimes it was District of Columbia code that had precedence, and then sometimes it was California code that had precedence. And one of those points of conflict was water. So California's water control is a little more progressive in the code than it is in DC, and so in a final site here in California, we'd be able to use that filtered gray water and use it to irrigate the edible plants, but in DC we weren't, and it was one of those moments where we were dealing with multiple levels of bureaucracy and rules, and having to figure out which is the most stringent that we need to follow at any one point. I'd also like to point out that, again, different than a CBD, there was a number of things that we had to do on this project, either for the competition or because we were students and not an office, that we had to create to compete in the competition. With, again, a special shout out to the graphic designers who helped us along the way. On the top left is the final sheet layout, and over the 2 years the sheet layout evolved many times, and with the work of one of the graphic designers, we were able to come up with a sheet, a title block, a brand identity to our project and to our team that I think is fairly successful. And I also I pulled one of the G sheets to show how many drawings we had for a 800 square foot house. So it was 150 drawings for 800 square feet, which is insane. Other aspects that we had to do as students that we don't have necessarily experience doing, but trial by fire, were the specifications. So this is just a sheet pulled from the specifications. I don't remember which category it was, but we had over 120 page spec, I think, that was part of a 600-page project manual that we had to assemble while finishing construction drawings and doing construction. And then other screenshots here. The web page it's a screenshot of the front page. I'm sure many of you have seen the website. But again, we were preparing that. That was Preet Anand, who's one of the actually a engineering physics major, a bunch of architects, and one graphic designer putting together a website with supplemental work from a lot of other people, but a lot of it was learning on the fly. And then lastly, these two images on the bottom are pamphlets that we handed out during the tours, which was part of a lot of this was part of our communications component to the competition. And so we tried to come up with diagrams that explained some of the systems of the house to the general public, and educate them in a friendly way. And so that was, again, architects and engineers trying to teach those systems to graphic designers so that they can create graphics that, you know, the general public can understand. I'd also like to call out at this time the different disciplines that helped out on the project, and the individuals that contributed art, often at the very last minute, to get it to DC. Travis McFlynn did the ceramics, which you can see here in the bottom corner. And the ceramics were an interesting story because it was using clay that was harvested from San Francisco Bay. And then he takes recycled wine bottles, crushes those wine bottles up, and uses that ground glass as the enamel. So the green color you're seeing here from the plates is from recycled wine bottle glass. Just trying to go in some kind of order here. We also had a student who did the glassware, again using those recycled wine bottles and basically re-slumping new glass. Matt Harvey did custom glass fixtures for us, one of which you can see here above the island. Julia Goodman did an art paper piece. It's not seen in this shot. Alicia Escott, Grady Gordon, Sarah Hofstetter all did paintings. Sarah's piece is seen here in the living room in the end. Ryan Francis did a dustpan and broom for us. He's an ID student. Lily Cole did a compost bin, also an ID student. Apologize with the names here. Alexandra Milliken did textiles, and I'll actually move on to the next shot. Alexandra she upholstered the couch that you see again in the distance, as well as doing this throw rug, which was fantastic. Zara, Lauren, Crystal, Sam, May, and Victoria all did fashions that we actually put in the bedroom closet. Paul Taylor, who I think is in the audience tonight, did a custom wax entry light, and then Jeremy Kaplan did the coffee table that again you see in the distance. And again, these were contributions that weren't necessarily tied to points in the competition. Points, I mean, it was related to architecture, but there wasn't a clear connection. But we thought it was really important, coming from a school like CCA and coming from the interdisciplinary nature that we kind of accepted as the terms of this project, to bring in as many different disciplines from around the school. I also want to point out that Andrew did the table, and so this table actually pulls out from under the island, and you can move that small coffee table, fold up the two ends, and actually fit 10 people in our living room, which was tried on 2 different dinner parties during the event. Also, I don't see Grady's name, but Grady is an illustration student from CCA. He did this piece above the bed. So after we had designed the house, we had to get it to DC. And so I wanted to show this map of the U.S. because there's a level of logistics that were involved in this project that's not necessarily seen at first glance, such as all of the sliding doors in the house actually have a really highly engineered glass. And on the south face, it's argon-filled glass, and on the north side, it's krypton-filled glass. Well, as you can imagine, that pressurized gas doesn't travel well over the Rocky Mountains. So we actually had to avoid most of those mountains by driving through Arizona, which lengthened the road trip for our house, which again factors into when we had to be ready to go from Santa Clara. So there's a level of logistics there that was kind of insane. And then a quick, just a little diagram of where we were on the mall relative to the Capitol and the Washington Monument. And at this point, I want to show a quick video of that construction process. So the construction process was, there's a 6-month window to do most of the construction, and then a 4-day window. And I have 2 videos that kind of show the differences between the two. So again, steel moment frames that weren't needed for structural concerns in terms of a house sitting on foundations, but more for lateral stability, again, on the 10-day road trip across the country. And so this is behind Santa Clara's library on their campus. Primary structure was stick frame with blown-in insulation, as well as some blue jean bat insulation, and actually fiberglass as well. But the 3 modules were built together and then disassembled, which you'll see next. Here's the racking system going up. And what we tried to do with the solar panels and the racking system was make one plane of panels that was then kind of integrated with the architecture. Oh, the red you're seeing here is a vinyl billboard that was taken from Clear Channel Warehouse. And so this was, these were billboards that vinyl's not recyclable per se, except for can be reused. And so we added it as a second waterproof membrane to the sides of the house. We had one of the largest decks in the competition. In fact, our deck was, I believe it ended up at 700 square feet with a 800 square foot house. But you could really feel the difference, especially with that, again, the courtyard and that terracing down with the garden. Everyone walked into our front door and they instantly had a view out towards that deck, and they said, without even seeing the rest of the house, your house feels bigger than all the other houses I went into. And so we were able to get far in construction in Santa Clara, but as you see, there was no landscape in, there was no pond in, the handrail wasn't built, again, because we didn't know some of the site restrictions, and so there was an element to arriving in DC that was a surprise. And I'm going to call up Andrew here to talk about that transition from Santa Clara to DC.
So part of building a house that's not a box, when you're competing with people that are building boxes, is complexity. So there's inherent complexity to having a house that's got a lot of interesting angles and a lot more layers, essentially, of building. So that meant when it came time to take it apart to ship it, there was a lot more we had to take apart than some of our competitors. So this is our house. You can see how far away from its sort of finished state it is as we're pulling it in Santa Clara to put on the trucks. At this point, there was students, many of whom were risking failing classes just to work 14, 16 hours a day to get this thing done before we shipped it. So then this is us putting them on the trucks that we hoped they would fit on. They were double drop lowboys, and there was points when just to get the house low enough to go under bridges, the truckers and some of us were tampering with the air ride suspension on these trucks just to get them down another ½ inch so they could clear the overpasses. And then when it came time to put the house on the mall, I'm not sure whose decision this was, but the competition starts at midnight. So starting at midnight on the first day, you can get your house on the mall. So basically, everybody stands back a few steps from the mall, and then as soon as they say go, it's every team for itself. So here you can see Oblio there, and I think Brandon Jenkins and a couple other students getting the footprint laid out. It just took a couple of hours for us to lay out a footprint, and then I think by about 3 a.m. we had our house on cranes, and then worked solid. By 10 a.m. the next morning, we had the 3 modules essentially set, but we didn't stop working then. We many of us who were concerned with the construction, not just our team, but all the teams, started the first day with a 24-hour shift. And working construction, that's a pretty rough thing to do, but for us it definitely paid off in the end. We had more work to do, but we were one of the first houses signed off for most of the kind of control checks that you have to get. So us pulling the modules off our trucks in DC. This is after repairing a bunch of damage that these modules sustained due to the flooding in Georgia, where they got stuck, and placing them on our piers. So, and then the mall just sort of explodes. This is the morning after getting there. So, I'll let Kyle.
One of the crazy parts was those of us that weren't part of that kind of crazy 24-hour crew left at 2 in the morning, 2, 3 in the morning after the first module had been set. And so we arrived again at 10 a.m. to kind of relieve that crew that had worked through the night. And what we arrive onto is, I think at one point there was 10 cranes fully erect on the National Mall, framing the Capitol, and then just organized chaos going on the mall. And before I go to that next picture, I want to just show two videos. So again, a 4-day construction sequence versus a six month plus construction sequence, and it really was organized chaos on the site. So we had 25 students, and everyone knew that there was always another task to do, and it was kind of show up and work as long as you can, go sleep, and then come back and do it all over again. And wash, rinse, repeat. There were times where there was work being done on kind of 3 levels. I remember being under the end cap B on the end there, and I was hooking up the drain spout underneath the house. Meanwhile, there was someone standing less than 2 feet above me, sanding the finished deck with a power sander. And then there was someone on a ladder above him putting in flashing. And there was someone standing on the house finishing the racking system within one small section of a house. And again, this is the morning after the night Andrew was describing. We showed up, or this might be late afternoon because the racking's up, but we showed up and all 3 modules were already in place, tied together. And then here you can see one of the exploded axons that we produced for the construction set, showing the different layers, both the interior and exterior, and then assembling the redwood rain screen. And here you can see also how the PV skirt was kind of tied in behind that rain screen. And I have one more video which I might abbreviate. It's 2 minutes long, but this is the kind of arrival in DC and kind of setting the stage. We got a little overzealous with monuments, but we really were a stone's throw from the Washington Monument in particular. And the day before the weekend before I got there, which I guess was a week before we hit the mall, there was tents set up for a big book trade show, like national book trade show sponsored by National Archives. And so the mall sees a lot of crazy events happen week by week, and we had a lot of locals come by and what is this? Where'd this come from? Here you can see again some of the people working on top of each other, literally. Again, one of the one of the challenges was, again, that the landscape strategy, the try to embedding the house in this landscape, was we had to fabricate a landscape again in those 4 days, knowing that we were going to have to take it apart again in 2 weeks. Luckily, the safety inspector wasn't there to see no harness and no hard hat, but that's another conversation. Yeah, there was all levels of construction going on, from cutting stainless, meanwhile doing finished painting. Alright, I think that's that. And again, I like this shot on the right because in addition to the seams of the modules, we also needed seams for the deck. The deck had to be a modular strategy as well, and so there were kind of template pieces to show how it fits together, and then we take out these template pieces, cut a new one, and sew it up so that again that seam couldn't be seen. And again, here's Annabelle on the bottom left fixing a threshold detail that had also gotten damaged in transit. This is one of my favorite shots that we were able to find because it shows all 20 houses, and you can see some of the different strategies kind of employed. This is Spain with a pivoting roof, which we'll show in a minute. And then this is a kind of zoom in on our neighborhood, and you get kind of a sense of how many people are moving through these houses at any one time. And I think the total estimate was around 300,000 people walked through the houses, and 300 total in all houses, not our house. And that's quite remarkable considering the weather that we were about to incur. So here you can see who exactly our neighbors were. And then quick anecdote. We had, the night before the contest started, there's 2 different parties going on, and we were able to meet some of our fellow competitors, and it didn't really feel like a competition because we all knew what we had to experience to get there. And so Michael and I were coming back to our house with some members of the German team and some members of the Puerto Rico team who we had met at dinner earlier that night. And we walk in and everyone tells us to hush and to grab a hard hat because the final safety inspection was going on, and everyone needed a hard hat even though the house looked exactly like it is here. But it was hard hat. So we scrambled to find hard hats, and while we're 50 people in the house, we find out that we passed final inspection. And so we hadn't been able to use any of the energy that the house was producing all week until that moment. And an impromptu dance party breaks out, which I'll just show a little bit of. Again, there's members of the German team in our house. There's members of Puerto Rico, Illinois, and we're just playing, if you're going to San Francisco hip hop right now. And in a 20-minute dance party, we used an insane amount of energy. I think it was 7 kilowatt hours in 20 minutes versus which is I think a little bit less than we were producing on a cloudy day. Again, in 20 minutes. But putting that THX sound system to good use. So next day, wake up, and this is all the pomp and circumstance of the opening ceremony. And here you can see Secretary of Energy Stephen Chu cutting the ribbon, and everyone deciding to pose in front of our house. So 60 Minutes had come by and toured the houses and told us that they wanted to profile four different houses for the competition. And they came back to us and were really excited and said, we want you guys to be one of the 4. Later that day, Secretary Chu and his entourage showed up at the house for question and answers, and he was really excited about Team California because of his California background. The 60-minute producers saw that and decided on the spot to scrap their initial idea of 4 teams and instead just do a profile on our house by interviewing Stephen Chu, walking through our house with Leslie Stahl. And so in a 60-minute segment still to be aired, the secretary is talking about our house in relation to the overall decathlon, which is pretty exciting. And like Isla pointed out, over $1 million in ad buy money could be had from the publicity we've gotten in a variety of sources and in a variety of different media. And this is the team posing after construction with the secretary. I don't think we'd actually passed final inspection the first day he showed up. And again, the organized chaos that was post-construction. I wanted to just play. Should we play the clip? Okay. One of the challenges of the competition was designing a house that felt livable, but also designing an exhibit, and that there was a Disneyland aspect to it, that people were waiting sometimes 45 minutes in the rain to get into the house, and so we wanted to move as many people through the house as possible, and so designing a tour route that didn't have switchbacks or congestion points became critical. And again, just shots of people kind of touring through the house. And then I love this shot. This is right after we won the architecture contest. This is the first contest to be announced. And after we heard that we weren't third or second, we were pretty optimistic that we were going to win architecture. And I say that because on the next day was the communications contest. And I'm just going to play a little bit of this clip to show the contrast between that previous clip and this one. So we had just found out that third and second place didn't go to us, and so we were pretty pessimistic about communications. We're looking pretty dour right now, looking at the ground. Again, just like we really had to stand here in the cold, and I don't know the exact moment.
Announce the first place award goes to Team California.
And complete shock. I mean, we're really proud of the job we did on the website and all of the supporting materials, but a moment of complete shock, and but also this kind of idea that this is the second day in a row that we took first in the competition, and we were feeling good about what we had done to get there. So I just wanted to show those two in contrast. And then the weather came. And we had, I don't know how many inches of precipitation, but we got drenched. And we had thousands of people, again, waiting hours to get into the house, bringing their wet clothes and wet umbrellas, and actually did a lot of damage to the house in those wet conditions. Quickly, there's 1,000 points in the competition, and they're about 100 points each, except for one notable exception, which was net metering. And on the right was our performance. So we took top 3 in 7 of the 10 contests, which showed our strength, across the board. And the two notable exceptions were comfort zone and net metering. And before saying what happened with comfort zone, what happened was strategy. As the weather turned, we knew that we weren't going to be able to produce as much energy as Illinois and as Germany, which had more calibrated systems really for net metering. They were expected to generate more electricity. But what happened was we were generating so little electricity relative to the competition, or relative to those two, who are our biggest competitors. We had to stop using energy at night, which affected our comfort zone score. And the reason we did that was by finishing above net zero, by producing more energy over the contest than we used, there was a 100 point bonus basically for net metering. And so we basically calibrated the system to only use energy when we needed, so that we produced 1 kilowatt hour over net zero to make that 100-point threshold, and then took the hit in comfort zone. But by doing that, and this was the final breakdown, Germany, Illinois, and then us at 3. By doing that, it ensured that we took 3rd place and not 4th place. Because when we started that day, we really thought we were going to take 4th, because we knew that Illinois and Germany had produced more energy, and we weren't sure where we were relative to Ontario. But net metering and making sure that we had that 1 kilowatt over is actually what ensured 3rd place. And now, because of time, we're just going to quickly just pass over some of the other houses and show you what some of these other teams did. This was Team Arizona, and again, embracing the module just gets repeated, and they came up with an interesting trom wall here, but don't have time to get into it. Team Spain, again, this was pretty crazy. Each of these, there's actually three modules here, and they're on a truck bed that actually parts of it can move. And then went a little outrageous with the sculpture that you see there on the bottom left. But the entire roof basically pivoted on a center ball joint. But it leaked like a sieve during the rain season. Team Germany, who actually took first place in this year's competition, as they did in 2007, with a stacked strategy, and the entire house was clad in PV, as well as having PV on the roof. And so on those rainy days, the thin film that they had, even on the north elevation, they were producing as much energy from the north elevation as I believe they were on the roof, because of the increased surface area, because they were able to take in power from indirect light. But you see their living space, they were able to take advantage of the double height, and they even had some interesting, spatial tricks, such as a bed that pulled out of stairs that went to the lower level. This is Ohio State, and they had a strategy of thick walls pretty much on four sides, and each wall had different pieces that could pull out and be used in that central space. This is Rice, which actually took second in architecture. And what Rice did was they made a low-cost home. So I think their house was like $180,000, $140,000, and was made for low-income housing in the lower third ward. Yes. And then Puerto Rico, and their indoor-outdoor strategies. Again, the competition was challenging because we had to design, one of the competitions was market viability. So where is the house supposed to return to versus DC climate. So Germany's house was dramatically different than Puerto Rico's home, and would perform dramatically different in those contexts, but they have to perform well in DC and get measured for DC climate. And one of their tricks, spatial tricks, was this green piece, which again had program in it. The bed actually pops out kind of like a Murphy bed, and the whole thing cranks away from the wall to reveal the bathroom behind the bedroom. Virginia Tech, which had two sliding walls. There's the white you see here is actually a trom wall, full water, and then the metal facade, which you can see from the interior on the bottom right. And it's hard to make out this top left image, but that's actually their house on the truck, arriving at midnight. And so all of us are looking around at the riggers, waiting for our trucks to show up, and Virginia Tech comes in, flashing their lights, one module ready to go. It was a little disheartening at that moment, but it turns out that they were actually late in finishing their house for final inspection, so they actually started at a disadvantage. How that happened, I don't know, but they weren't ready to go. And then this is just a detail of bathroom skylight that you can actually see the underside of their solar panels. This is Cornell, which took a dramatically different approach than a lot of the other houses, another one of the outside of the box schemes. And their market viability strategy was, this is a house set off in the countryside, that's a second home, a vacation home, hence the kind of wild landscape, and reusing kind of agrarian silos from northern New York. And then lastly, we didn't have time to show all of the houses. I just wanted to thank the team, both that are here tonight and not here. Even though only a few of us were able to be there at the very end for the final celebration, it was the team here on the website, the team here in the room, and many others that made this possible. And so I just wanted to one more thank you to the team.
Great. Can I get the lights to be turned on? We're going to have a short 15-minute kind of panel discussion before we go celebrate next door at Axis, and you're all invited to the reception. And the panel, I asked a few of our faculty and some of the students involved in the project to have a kind of bigger discussion about what the Solar Decathlon means as a project in relation to future energy issues, dealing with sustainability in the curriculum, et cetera. So if I can ask all of you who are on the panel to come forward, you have to pick up a chair and bring your chair onto the stage. And I'll just while they're working, that's part of the Solar Decathlon, is you have to labor during the entire process. Those that are joining us here on stage are two of the faculty that were involved. Andrew Cudlitz, if you can wave, who started out the project, Oblio Jenkins, who ended the project, Natalie Gattegno, who's walking on stage now with her chair, who is running our Ecolab, project coordinator for our Ecolab, and she and Mona El-Kafif down at the end are currently running an Agropolis studio. Noah Greer, Noah, raise your hand, and Anessa Matson, both of whom were student leaders involved in the project. And Noah was also a student at the beginning of him coming to CCA, started a green student group. And Robert Martial, who's the director of the Pacific Energy Center in the middle, and Robert is also one of our building energy faculty in architecture. And the first thing I wanted to ask all of you, after having gone through this, and this is one of these issues at the end of 2 years where a lot of the students have actually graduated that started this project, what you think the value of the Solar Decathlon project is as an educational instrument, and maybe to address a couple issues. One is the notion of a collaborative project that involves many different faculty and students over a long period of time. The importance of collaboration in relation to architectural practice, because this is always an issue in our design studios, that students are always dealing with their own project, and of course what you saw tonight is that there's no way this project could have happened without the many bodies involved, and also the issue of taking on a real project as a part of studio. And this is like the design-build issue, which often ends up with us dealing with very small projects just because of what we can build as opposed to kind of larger scale issues. There should be an on switch.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I guess the way I would answer that question, personally, as a designer working on this project and leading the first studio, it was a bit strange for me. I never designed a house. I'd never designed a prefab project, and I never designed a sustainable project. So here I was leading a studio on a house, a sustainable house that was prefab. And so I was a little nervous kind of running that studio, and what I see now kind of at the end of all of this, especially in relation to CCA and its place in relation to all the other universities. We're not a huge research university. We don't have a lot of money, but what we're really good at is design innovation. So I think that's what really pushed the project, and I think we need to kind of, in all of our studio projects, kind of normally, after this project now, to really think that through, that we can make dramatic change in the world, not only through kind of an expert body of knowledge in relation to sustainability and all these other things, but our own skills as designers, so we can kind of rethink problems that we think are somewhat known, and in this case, literally think outside of the box. So one of the first things we did in the studio was just do kind of a survey of the, what it was, 2001 through 2007 projects, so 20 projects each time, so maybe 60, 70 projects over this competition, and kind of evaluate what were the things that each project did well, or what were the similarities and differences. And I think that initial move by Aaron Horace was really intelligent, and like Peter said earlier, it really stayed through the entire project because it was such a strong design innovation.
For me, it was
Since we're recording this, you could do that.
So for me, so I kind of took the baton a little bit after Andrew, and had the design and follow through till the completion, among other people, Matt and Peter and everyone. For me, right now, what's sitting bubbling up is compromise and clarity. So how can you be clear about your intent and how you want your voice in the larger sea of voices? How can you clearly articulate that? And then how can you also at the same time compromise and understand that there's all these other people, all these other students, all these other constraints, and how can you fit yourself in that flow? And it was amazing watching the students just battle. It was amazing that people cared so much about it. And that's really, I think, that what they're talking about, what the kind of continuity through the whole thing is, people, they just believed in it so much that they just wouldn't, let go. And there's so many opportunities to just compromise, in a way that diluted the project, but yet, you have to stick through it. It was amazing for me to watch.
Let's see. I guess as a student, what this gave all of us working on it is it basically just empowered us as designers and helped us understand how what our skills are. By the end of this project, every little challenge that came up in it, we were able just to find a solution very quickly, because at that point we came to a point where things had to happen in half a day, and you knew that you could do it. Like things that before would totally overwhelm people, they were just like, okay, let's do this. This is how this is going to work. And I think it allowed me to explore a lot about green building, like the different niches that I could possibly get into and help innovate in, which is what is hugely valuable to me and would only have happened in a design build in reality context. So that, as well as just working with engineers for the first time. If you guys ever need to get them to start thinking with you in terms of design, one thing I found that works really well is let's brainstorm about this. Like if you set it up, this is a problem that you can solve, they're like, go on automatic pilot, they're like, okay, we'll solve this. yeah, use that.
The next question I wanted to ask was about the competition itself, because how you would assess the competition in relation to the goal of sustainability, because do you think it's a good model? And if so, why? And if not, what would you do to improve it? I mean, for me, there were a number of red flags that came up in relation. I mean, the first question that I asked is, why are we doing a single-family home when we're talking about sustainability? Why aren't we dealing with housing, for example? Why isn't economics, an economical model of sustainability a part of this, or why weren't students tasked? You know, the fact that we were building 800 square foot homes for over $1 million in some cases. I mean, the $1 million in publicity was actually paid for in the end in relation to the cost of the project. And the other was the role of engineering versus architecture in the way in which the competition was set out. Just so that you know, we won first place in architecture, but architecture was 100 points out of 1,000. Architecture was equal to hot water. I think in terms of, you know, I kept looking at the points going, but that's not fair. So, you know, what's your assessment of the competition and its overall goals?
Okay, I maybe answer the first question. Is this working?
Don't think it's on.
Hi.
Okay.
Hello? Okay. First of all, I have so much respect what you all have done. I mean, just seeing the lecture tonight, although I'm here for 2 years and I was always seeing blobs of it or was on reviews, but to see the whole performance and to observe how much trust it was on this side, it's incredible. It's really incredible. I think you can all be very, very proud, and I think it's also great that we could see that the initial design somehow translated to be the final product, and there were so many authors involved who all took or can identify with the project. I think it's really great. So this is just an overall feedback to the final product. So coming back to the competition, so first of all, I think it's really important that students are involved into design build, because it's an incredible part of their education to learn to design in a kind of secure environment in the school. So it's not something that's completely alienated to you when you get into an office where you're suddenly confronted with engineers and you have to have a dialogue with them. So I think design build is very important. For sure, when it comes to students, it's going to be a small piece. So it's not a big block or whatever. So from an urban perspective, I would say the suburban house, which is the Solar de Castellon, is not really sustainable, because at the end of the day, even if we would design all these off-grid houses that are completely self-sufficient, we will not ride our horse there or take the bike to go into our suburb. So it will always be connected to an amount of infrastructure and an amount of fuel we are using to get into our suburban house. So this is something, it's somehow critical, but on the other hand, I think we can solve one problem. This is, let's design a sustainable house rather than a non-sustainable house. But I would wish that, and maybe this is not related to schools, but rather to architectural organizations, that there is a similar set of competitions that are also related to decathlons or real build projects where bigger chunks of the city are taken on, and we can explore sustainability issues in the fabric of the city, a block or whatever. And seeing the house again and knowing that it's possible to put it off the grid, it's also exciting to think about, well, we can also occupy urban territories with this house. It can be on a warehouse, it can be in void spaces where the infrastructure is already set in place. So this is something I think is also in addition to this.
I would say, as someone involved in the competition, I mean, in some ways it's a total sham, right? That you have 20 teams that have to raise boatloads of money, and they're designing a single-family home that's most comfortable in some suburban environment somewhere. And this is supposed to be, you know, this great solution to this huge problem we have. So it's totally ridiculous in many ways, I think, the competition, but at the same time, it's really incredible, and it takes a huge investment to push technology as far as possible and try to push architecture along with it as far as possible. So it was totally amazing to be there and see all these houses, and really just to see all of these ideas that were made possible by all that money and all that time and all those people. Even though there are definitely some problematic contradictions just sort of inherent in the whole thing, I thought.
No, I think I also have to congratulate the team. I'm very excited to be joining Ecolab now with like such an incredible project already underway before I've actually kind of arrived here, so thank you. No, it's exciting also to kind of see the kind of the culture of the the culture and the conversation of sustainability taking place within the school, but then also with a kind of incredibly broader agenda, which I think is probably one of the shortcomings of the competition itself, not only in terms of scale, right, but also in terms of the potential for sustainability to be actually thought through infrastructural terms, for example. The fact that it's only solar energy that is actually supported by the solar decathlon is already inherently kind of troubling. So there's what I really do appreciate in terms of the Team California's effort also was the integration of water, for example, one of the many kind of smaller moves that took place that actually talk about kind of a larger, broader, bigger kind of understanding of how we will actually be able to inhabit our environments in the future, and that doesn't necessarily only have to be through the energy source, but then also through the kind of recycling, water cycling, and all the other cycles that we actually need to be responsible for. And I think it's interesting to potentially conceive of the solar decathlon project as maybe being a decathlon, maybe being a housing decathlon, maybe being an urban decathlon that would actually maybe talk about, you know, even the aggregations that could actually take place of the single unit or the single house within kind of broader infrastructural terms that I think could really push the conversation and push the kind of boundaries of our comfort zones. Sorry to use that word, but in other terms, which I think could be pretty exciting. And I think the room for innovation does exist when you actually aggregate these and actually think of the kind of larger ramifications that could take place within that realm. So it's exciting to see what you guys have done, and exciting to see where this could actually kind of push our comfort zones in the future.
What's the role of innovation? I mean, on the one hand, and technology, let's say on the other, not just in relation to competition, but in relation to ecological strategies in general. And I'm saying this because at the Rising Tide conference, Linda Gross, who's one of our fashion design faculty, had said something that is sort of rung in my ears ever since, which was the notion of fashion design itself was non-sustainable in that it was always pushing this idea that every single season you had to buy new clothing, right? And that kind of constant design and consumerism as a cycle was, and the push for innovation in this sense in terms of design was somewhat non-sustainable as a kind of concept. And so I think it's an important issue, because another issue in relation to the decathlon was that we kept saying that you had to have a kind of sure strategy, that if you really pushed the envelope in terms of innovation, which often meant failure coming with it, and you didn't know what might happen, and you couldn't afford to fail at the decathlon because you want to win the competition, what does that mean for pushing innovation? You know, or something like market viability, which was another one, which really meant you had to somehow fit within what would be an acceptable set of norms, which is part of the reason that the single-family house was put on the table in the first place. What about innovation and sustainability for me?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I appreciate about the house, our house, your house, is that it it doesn't look like a solar house, and I think that's one of the things that you need to be proudest of, is that you did it in a way that worked. You worked with engineers, you worked with construction folks, and you made something that all the technology and all the performance is kind of tucked away, but it's there. And I teach on the building energy systems class here, and I hope that we're getting across that you need to do this stuff, but you also need to make sure that it's a good project from sort of an architecture design perspective. On this stage, I don't know how many years ago, and some of you might have been here, Paul Hawken, not Stephen Hawken. Paul Hawken was on this stage, and he was talking to architecture and design students, obviously, And he was saying that the situation that we're in, given sort of, the state of architecture and sustainability, it's a design problem. We designed our way into this system, whether we're designing cities, whether we're designing homes, whether we're designing skyscrapers. We designed our way into the system, into this problem that we have, and it's through design that we can get ourselves out. So I'm, delighted to sort of be part of this faculty. That I wasn't part of the project, but when I saw some of the images on the website, when I got notice that we had won, I saw some former students, and it was like, just amazing, and to see this beautiful project sort of coming out of, the Santa Clara University, and us as well. Its relevance as a single-family house comes from I think is really, it's important now because you may know that by 2020, new residential construction has to be net zero in California. That's the way things are headed. And by 2030, it's commercial that needs to be net zero. So you guys will be doing that if you've decided to practice in California. So this is, a step in the right direction there.
Can I add one comment? So just to add a little bit what Natalie was mentioning, the castle, I'm just concentrating on the yellow layer of energy, which is solar energy, and that there are so many other layers that are related to sustainability, the water and what we are trying to investigate in our studio, the food production on site, etc. I think by scaling up and saying, okay, the family house is not the only typology we have to develop. In the moment when you take the one house and add it to another one and another one and another one, they together as an aggregate can do much more in relationship to sustainability. So, for example, the German project, which was completely cladded in solar, the solar panels could feed into the urban fabric, the neighboring fabric, which is not maybe updated in relationship to sustainability. If you take gray water or garbage, for example, which we are producing on site, or gray water, if we would feed them together into gray water pots, we could create new kinds of landscapes. So it's in the moment when it's not only the one house that has a limited amount of production or harvesting, and we understand it as a larger aggregate, then the design process gets a completely different push, because we can create new kinds of urban landscapes in this discussion.
I think one of the best things that the house did in terms of innovation is just not about technological gadgets and minimizing our impact on but was re-looking at how we act as a species, how we live, and thinking about the home as a caretaker of its site, and so that what we produce and this voracious appetite we have actually feeds back into your water table, your soil layers, and how you can rethink about what it is. There's not anybody in here who doesn't want more, who doesn't desire more. That's what we are. We consume and then we produce from that consumption. So how do you start making that habit part of your sustainable innovation thinking? So I think that's what we did with the landscape and the water really well. We became caretakers instead of minimizers.
One quick comment. I appreciate all the comments about the kind of scaling up of everything, and I think one thing, it would be interesting once we do the publication and kind of look back on it, because actually the project started, the first month of the project with all 16 students started actually at the urban level, and large-scale aggregations of all of the projects, and then we worked back from there, because it makes so much more sense to work at to start from the scale of the network and then try to understand the units and so on. So it'll be good, kind of fun to kind of look back at this and see where we can go.
For me, one of the more innovative parts of the process was just having engineers and architects and designers work together, because ultimately engineers are one of the leaders in sustainability and how the materials are produced and the efficiencies. So we need to be able to, but they need a housing for them to work in, you know. So I think there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of contrast between the two schools, but also you see where the opportunity is, and that's actually one of the more innovative things, is really working in an integrated way with the disciplines, because that's ultimately the bottom line, is that there's so many complex things going on, and it's not going to be accomplished as one profession, basically. And so I think that was unique in our suite. That was unique about our project as well, as we had two completely different cultures, which was great, because that's why I said compromise. You know, there's clarity and compromise. Both schools had to be really clear what their intent was, so that it could be understood by the other discipline, and then we could integrate or not integrate.
In a recent conference that was on the future of design, I commented that the excessive production and exchange that drives our consumer-oriented society has exploited nature to the point that we are literally covering the earth with our trash, and that in the future our greatest renewable resource will be garbage. So that if for the beginning of the century it was steel and glass and concrete, and that were the kind of materials, and in the 60s it was plastics, that for us our new nature and our material of the future would be trash. And because of this, in design, that we have to now encounter the inversion of our modern obsession with production and consumption through the process of digestion and regeneration, which means that in design, instead of just designing objects, we have to design them thinking through the disassembly and reassembly process. And what was interesting to me is I kept thinking, what happens to all these projects after the decathlon? And how does this also affect the way that you think about the design? Did the Solar Decathlon team think about how it would be disassembled or reused? I mean, I know that the Rice team actually designed their house for a specific site and used kind of after the decathlon. How do we start embedding these principles, let's say, into the way we think about design?
I think we tried. That's the reality. Is we tried to, and this is the contrast. The engineering component and the architecture component have different, actually, definitions of innovation. I remember you told the story when you were in the very beginning. You know, what does this project represent? Who do we ask? What do our schools represent? And we were like, okay, innovative, striving for the future, what's next? And they were like, innovation was really scary to them, because they wanted to be reliable, pragmatic, and deliver consistently, which is totally respectable, but it's totally different just on the term innovation. And I think it was an interesting,
It was part of a branding meeting, and they wanted to take the word innovation completely out of the whole brand. They felt that was scary.
But for me, so that gets back to the disassembly assembly. Like we were really trying to think about the structural system and how that could be articulated and fabricated, and it was less of a concern for them. So again, that was kind of this balance of, can we really think about the seam? Was it constant discussion? What's going to happen with these seams? How are we going to express them?
What I was going to say is we're over our time, and we are having a reception next door at Access. I wanted to thank the panel. The last